Today's episode is really special to me because I got to sit down and have an open and honest conversation with one of my closest friends who, oddly enough, I met through Instagram. Today, we didn't go off of any show notes. Usually I have little bullet points planned out, but today I didn't do that because I knew that with her, the conversation would just flow. And I wanted it to be really natural and, again, open and honest, and that's exactly what it was. We talk about imposter syndrome and all of the different versions of success out there. We get into a little bit about social media, and Lisa shares how she feels about it as a mother of 2 young daughters versus how she feels about it as a business owner. And I don't know, I'm just really excited for y'all to hear it. So I'll stop rambling and let's just get right into the episode. Welcome to Samantha's Beauty Confessions, where we engage in authentic conversations and confess everything it takes to turn our dreams into a reality. Together, we'll unlock your unique beauty and guide you toward living the life of your dreams. Get ready to go beyond the highlight reel, embrace the journey, and grow together, one conversation at a time. Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Samantha's Beauty Confessions. Today, I am so excited to be talking to my friend Lisa Tucker, who you may know on Instagram as Rooted with Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I am good. So for anyone, we're probably not going to keep that part in, but for anyone who doesn't hear that part, which is all of you listening, I just had like 3 takes on Lisa's Instagram handle, which kind of goes into what we're going to talk about today, which is imposter syndrome and just kind of the comparison as a whole in this industry. So just know that even though it will probably be taken out, that I just made a ton of mistakes in the beginning of this episode, but lucky for editing, y'all will never hear that. So before we get into the topic, though, I want Lisa to do an introduction and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of like what you do, what you're passionate about.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me today. It's an honor to see your face and be able to speak to your audience. My name is Lisa Tucker. I am an independent hairstylist and independent educator. I've been rooted in the industry for almost 20 years now, and I just love it. I also co-host a bi-weekly Instagram Live with a friend of mine, which is called Rooted Conversations. It also is put into podcast form over on the Commonwealth Conversation podcast. So it's kind of like a Dear Abby meets Dear Lisa. Everything is anonymous, and we try to problem solve for all of our friends within the industry.
Yeah, and I love that. For anyone who doesn't know, Lisa and I actually were just a part of a cohort program with the co-host of Rooted Conversations, Lindsay Smith. And Lisa actually ran that idea by me a few months ago, right? Like a few months back.
Yeah, you were the first one, actually.
She was like, I know this might sound crazy, but do you think that people would enjoy this? And just the anonymous side of the podcast, the lives, all of that, I think is really awesome because people sometimes are scared, again, imposter syndrome, to ask those questions. They feel like, maybe they're stupid questions or maybe, no one else is wondering that or whatever. But I think that the Dear Abby format is just so awesome. And I love that you all have started that.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like sometimes we are always everyone else's safe space when they're in our chair. Our clients come in and they tell us all their secrets, concerns, all of the things. And we don't really have a space like that with people who actually understand our industry. You can go and talk to a therapist, which is absolutely wonderful. And most of us do. But that therapist doesn't have the experience behind the chair like we do. So to be able to have an open format where we can talk about anything, literally anything, there is no topic off limits. I feel like it not only helps feed just kind of success, really. I mean, if you're in a place where you're not feeling great or your mental health is affected, speaking to somebody or asking advice from somebody that has maybe been through it or, I've been in the industry 20 years and I've worked in like all facets of this industry. So I kind of felt like, why not? So when I contacted you, I was like, Sam, what do you think? Do you think this is a weird idea? But I'm so glad you encouraged me.
Yes, no, I think it's awesome. And I think since you have been in the industry for 20 years, you said 20, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel like back when you very first started, do you feel like you were still struggling with imposter syndrome and comparison at all? Or like, I know social media has probably made it worse, but I'm just wondering about like 20 years back, if that was something that was common or no.
Absolutely. But like you said, it was kind of in a different format, I guess, if that's the proper word to use. I worked in a salon where I worked with very talented individuals, and I worked with somebody who probably about 3 years into my career actually encouraged me to become an educator for a color line. She was like, "You are so knowledgeable. You have such a love for this." You know, she also was an educator as well. And she said, "We are holding auditions here in Detroit. Just come out. You've got nothing to lose." Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, no way is this going to happen. It's not going to happen. Not a chance. But you know what? Let's try it. So I audition for it. They bring me back for a second one, and then they hired me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was 23 years old, I think. And I remember part of the gig was shadowing another educator and just seeing like how the progression of the class went. And I stood there and I was like, absolutely not. No, they're going to be judging my outfit. They're going to think my hair looks funny, or I say too much, or like too much, or what if they ask me a question I don't know?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, at that time, the imposter syndrome got the better of me, and I did not choose to carry on. I had a really great conversation with the company. They were so encouraging and amazing, and encouraged me to come back at a later date, which I did and was very successful doing. So, but yeah, like that was imposter syndrome for me that unfortunately got the better of me. And now, you know, almost 17 years later, I feel like it, you know, sometimes I can feel it creeping back in, especially in a digital space, because, you know, the more successful you are, sometimes the more critics that come out of the woodwork, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but honestly, like you said, in the digital space, like maybe Pam, who's going to be editing this podcast, maybe we will leave in the beginning where I admitted that I messed up, because that's one thing that we have to remember is that, you know, 9 times out of 10, people aren't going to keep those things in there. And really and truly, like, I'm okay now, I think, just through like, I don't know, feeling relief through admitting certain things out loud to people, and just, I don't know, opening up that conversation when some people might still kind of be scared to do so. I feel like I'm willing to do it. And so if we do leave that part in, and that helps somebody know that editing is a real thing, and that, you know, the digital space, although we all are guilty of comparing ourselves, that it is just this curated version of what we're actually doing. And I think that back to your opportunity with the educating, I think that how you said that you let your fear keep you from even doing it at all, that is so common. And like how you said, I didn't even think it would ever work out, but I just went and did it anyway. That's still a really big thing to do, because most people, myself included, like probably wouldn't have even gone to that interview because you were so sure, you know, that you wouldn't get it. So I feel like that's another commonality that we all have, no matter what industry that we're in. So how long did you do it after they called you back the second time?
Maybe about a year. That is kind of when I started my life, like I got married, I started having kids. It was a point and a season in my life that I really just didn't want to travel a lot. I wanted to be home with my babies and really just enjoy, you know, the success of my business.
Mm-hmm.
I always I'm a very firm believer in keeping doors open and never burning bridges. So it was another honest conversation of this season of my life cannot support this journey, even though I want it so much. If I could split myself in two, I would, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't. And it was full support, you know, and I'm forever grateful for that, because I do think that having experience also really just, I mean, it makes me who I am today, and I'm able to help others in our industry. And like you said, we all make mistakes. On my Instagram, one of my top performing posts is me admitting a mistake that I made
Mm-hmm.
on a color.
Like on a hair color? Yep.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was so bad. And luckily it was my assistant. We were playing and trying a new technique, and I turned her, oh goodness, like bright freaking orange. And that was, I mean, it was my bad, right? And
Yeah.
all those things happened, but I showed the process in which how I fixed it and how you should not be embarrassed to have those conversations with your clients or with another stylist, because we always put out so much smoke and mirrors and all the good stuff on Instagram or TikTok that people have an unrealistic gauge and meter on, like what success looks like, or any of that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when I first started Instagram, that I saw all these people with all these fancy lights and equipment and cameras, and I didn't know any better. I didn't know there was other ways. Like, I didn't know you could possibly record just with your iPhone, which is now what I do, but I was used to seeing all the smoke and mirrors online. So I went out and bought all of the stuff I was seeing and spent thousands and thousands of dollars. But what people, they're getting better about it now, I think, but what people weren't so great at showing in the beginning stages was, you know, although it looked really nice and put together on one side, the other side of the room was a mess. And again, like right now, I'm recording this episode at my mom's house, and behind me, everything looks really good. But in front of me, it looks like a bomb just blew up and there's cords everywhere and everything. But, you know, again, we don't show all of that. And so that's what Lisa and I have kind of connected more and more over this topic, because she actually reached out to me. When was it that you taught your first class? Was it last year?
It was January of 2023. So this year still, but yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. And you reached out to me like in the planning phases of that. And you were saying, you know, do you think I can teach a class? Do you think it's crazy of me to try? And, you know, what if I sell one ticket? What if I sell no tickets? Whatever. And I feel like that is a good example of how to overcome that imposter syndrome, is just by talking it out, like you mentioned earlier, because even if the person that you're talking with, even if you feel like they're going to think it's a dumb question, they've been there too, or they're still there. Like, I think my response back to you was, I don't know how to get over imposter syndrome. I'm still going through it every single day. Like, and I still am. And that was almost a year ago. So what do you think are some things that have helped you to, I don't know, not get over imposter syndrome, but to work through it as it's happening?
Well, honestly, having the courage to reach out for support really is a very big hurdle for some of us. But I mean, I can't say that, 20 years ago, I would have done that when I was not as outgoing or confident in myself, or confident in my ability to converse with others. But I reached out to you. We had met once in person, right? We met at one of your classes, but I don't know. I was like, I'm going to ask, what's the worst that can happen? She doesn't respond. Then I ask someone else. So I think being able to reach out and actually ask for help, or say to somebody, I'm really going through it right now. I feel like I'm not going to sell this class, or nobody's going to want to hear what I have to say, or, oh my gosh, I want to work with a brand. They want to have a meeting with me. What if I'm not good enough? So having a support system it's huge. And it's so, so important, I believe, because really without having a successful support system, we can't be successful in all of our endeavors.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing, I was actually listening to Mel Robbins' podcast maybe like 2 weeks ago or something. And one of the things that they were talking about is that avoiding certain things actually makes your imposter syndrome 10 times worse. And I totally can relate to that and agree with that, because I feel like that's our natural reaction to stuff that we're scared of, is to just act like it's not going on. At least for me, maybe I'm the only avoidant person out there, but I definitely, I just told my boyfriend, John, last night, actually, that I have to start practicing on avoiding things that I'm scared of, because what that does is every single time I do it, it just builds that fear up more and makes it stronger and stronger. And it shows it that I'm not going to tackle the fear and be able to move forward past it. But if we literally just put ourselves in a position where we have to put one foot in front of the other and go out and do the thing we're scared of, that kind of dulls that fear down and makes it smaller, where it can't control us as people. And really, that's all imposter syndrome is fear. It's, some people say that it's lack of being prepared, but I don't know. I'm probably in the top 10% of prepared people in the world, I would say, because I'm so OCD. It's not a good thing. I'm not bragging about that at all. That's actually not a good thing. But I feel like I definitely still struggle. So I don't know if it's lack of being prepared. I think it's just, again, avoiding it to the point that it's like almost like crippling, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard this once, and it was a therapist actually talking about imposter syndrome or just things that like anxiety, right?
Mhm.
So I do think that sometimes that goes hand in hand. But this person had said, I name that voice in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So this voice in my head is telling me you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not going to be successful, you're going to fail. But that is just a voice. That is not you.
Uh-huh.
You have to be able to separate yourself from those negative feelings and emotions, because if you don't, it'll take you down. I mean, that's what happened to me. And, you know, I am very lucky because I have a wonderful support system that encourages me all of the time. And even though I have that wonderful support system that is constantly helping, I still get it. But I will tell you, every time I conquer a hurdle or every time I complete something, I'm the opposite of you. I'm completely unprepared. So I don't think, you know, being prepared has anything to do with it. I feel that I'm possibly undiagnosed ADHD, like half of our industry. And, you know, you say you have a mess. I have a mess in front of me here too. So, but yeah, I think really a lot of the imposter syndrome is anxiety as well. And just having that accountability person, I think really can help as well.
Yeah. And one thing that really helped me was eliminating certain people from my daily life. And I know that is hard to do. It was very hard for me, but you always hear that, right? Like we are like the 5 people we're around most. But it wasn't until I removed myself from specific situations and people that I really saw that to be true. Because when you're wrapped up in it, you're like, especially if it's a coworker or a family member or a close friend or something, you're like, well, I can't just cut them out, you know, but really you can. And like, if they're affecting your mental health to the point that they're making you question yourself even more, like try to just take a step back slowly even. And it doesn't even have to be in real life. I found that there are certain people on Instagram that they don't do it intentionally, but when I see their posts, I start to do that comparison thing. And so I've had to mute people because, again, it's not their fault. It's my fault and my insecurities. But as I'm working through those, I don't need to see all of that stuff, you know? And so I just encourage anyone listening that, like, if there are situations that are bringing you down and doing more harm than good, then I think removing them slowly is a good thing. What do you think about that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, on the latest episode of Rooted Conversations, we were chatting a little bit about, not a little bit, a lot of it about imposter syndrome. And, you know, someone had asked me, how do you manage it? How do you conquer it? And, you know, I admitted on the show that I am someone who will cut and run if I'm in a position that makes me feel uncomfortable or unwelcome. So I am very lucky that I'm in the position with my clientele that I can do that. But I have found myself, I worked at a salon where I did not have support when it came to my bigger dreams and my goals. And it started slowing me down. And I was putting things off. I felt uncomfortable taking pictures or doing things. And I decided that was not good for me and that nobody was ever going to stand in the way of my goal. If I didn't complete a goal, it was not going to be because of someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't going to be from like the fear of getting made fun of or something. Because I definitely think that I had that too. And again, it wasn't anyone I was working with fault, you know, like it was my insecurities, but I was trying to do something different than the people around me. And I think sometimes you hear people talking about this a lot at hair shows specifically, but like when you're trying to do something different, it is uncomfortable. And when you feel uncomfortable, you start to question yourself and it's just this spiral. And so I totally agree with that. I think that your salon environment specifically, that you're with those people as much as you're with your family. I mean, for sure, or at least if you're working 5 days a week, which I was at the time, and it can seem, I think clients sometimes even can make us feel uncomfortable when we're pulling out tripods and they don't mean to, but it's just if we don't communicate our goals out loud, how can we expect people to know? And so that's where maybe those like weird looks come from, is because we haven't been vocal about what our goals are. But for me personally, in that situation, I wasn't vocal because I was confident that I was going to fail at it. And I didn't want to admit that I was working toward it, you know? That's kind of my go-to, is to just never say something out loud that I don't know for sure that I can do, because then if I don't do it, I'm just crazy embarrassed, which I'm getting better at that through therapy. But can you relate to that at all?
I'm dying over here because every single time you and I have a conversation, I just learn more similarities that we have.
We're the exact same.
Oh my gosh, we totally are. I 100%, like a lot of times too, even like I did an Ask Me Anything box yesterday on Instagram, and somebody was asking me about my goals and things like that for 2024. And I was like, there is no way in hell I'm putting that out there.
Yeah.
Because that little voice in my head was like, but what if you don't? That one person might remember if you don't do it. And I was like, I'm not going to look like an idiot. I really had this whole conversation with myself. And I sure as heck didn't put any of my goals on there. I said, stay tuned.
I know. And too, I feel like that's something that I deal with also, is that sometimes it's scary to share your goals, not just because of that part, but because you don't want other people to take the idea that you have. And that's something that I'm currently struggling with, is I had this big idea for my education in 2024, but I'm not going to like vocally say it until I have all my ducks in a row, because when I release it, I want it to be released wholeheartedly, because what'll end up happening is if anyone wants to take that idea and they can put it together quicker than me, then I won't do it at all. You know what I'm saying? I want this to be like this new, I don't know, like new phase of Samantha's Beauty Confessions. And so I'm actually talking with my virtual assistant after this today to kind of get all that in order. But I totally agree. It's scary to put yourself out there. And I think that for as much good as social media has, that I'm kind of nervous / anxious to see what like your daughters, what that generation, how they've grown up with it, you know? And I know parents say I try to limit screen time or whatever, but it is the way of the future. You know, technology is really what is taking over. And so I'm interested to see if when they get older, like our age, if they will be better than we are now, or if, you know, because they're just used to it, or if they'll still have these struggles too. Do you feel like your daughters have it right now?
I will say, so my youngest does not have any social media. And she also, I mean, I let her watch like YouTube Kids, you know, very mild things.
Hang on, because how old are they? 10 and
13.
Okay. 10 and 13.
So my 13-year-old, we very slowly, she actually is quite smart. She said to me, Mom, I really want an Instagram because then I can support your page. And of course,
you're like, okay, babe, I'll get you that.
You want to feed my ego? Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
We my husband and I, my husband actually, the only reason why my husband has an Instagram account is to support me. He does not do social media at all. So we kind of have, you know, I don't know if it's differing opinions, but like basically if our children are going to have social media, I'm the one that's going to be monitoring it. So having a talk with them about how to safely use it, how to properly use it, and the fact that there are so many people that have found a lot of success on there. Just because they have found success on there doesn't mean that you will. So creating healthy boundaries with that and not having unrealistic expectations of I'm, you know, just going to do this and become famous, you know, that kind of stuff I feel like is really important to teach them. I might be, you know, amongst the minority when it comes to letting my 13-year-old dip her toes into social. I really don't know. I make those decisions for her based on my own experience and not others. So I think my hope is that by the open conversations that I have with them and that my husband does too, that they're going to be able to utilize it in a much better and smarter way. And hopefully they'll be able to do more good with it. And really just because they have always grown up with it, you know, you and I did not, they're going to be able to have just a different perspective with it.
I don't have kids, obviously, but I almost think that like that generation, they've got to be more mentally tough than we were. Like I just think about myself when I was in middle school and high school and even college. Instagram came out when I was like my third year in college, I think. But I can't even imagine if it would have been out before that for me, because I already struggle with insecurities and, issues like that. But I would have been so much worse, I think, if social media would have been around. I'm so thankful now that I didn't really start using it until, I was 25 years old, probably, or 22 even, because I was at least that much more matured, quote unquote. I say that at 22. I'm not probably that mature. But I think that even now, like with hate comments and stuff on my business page, if those type of things were being said to me at 15, 16, whatever, it would have crushed me. And for someone who already had insecurities, again, I don't even know if I could have continued to put stuff out there. But now there are those kids who, in first and second grade, when we were saying we wanted to be doctors and lawyers or whatever, they want to be influencers. And so that's something that I'm just interested to see how it all plays out, because again, the letdown of feeling like, okay, well, maybe one of my friends started a YouTube or an Instagram or whatever and got famous, and then I tried it and didn't. So what will that do to those kids mentally,
Yeah. I mean, really, the letdown could be very large, right? And, and if they don't have those conversations, I mean, heck, I don't know. My daughter could grow up to be super famous. I will support her 100% if she is. But I think being able to have realistic expectations without crushing their dreams will set them up to be able to handle the different things that come with the territory of content creation, influencer markets, things like that. But then again, who knows if that'll even be a thing by the time they're adults?
I know. I'm wondering what will,
You just don't know.
I'm kind of speechless right now trying to think about that. But seriously, because if I could go back in time and tell myself in middle school that I would be doing the things I'm doing now and getting paid for it, I've always loved to create. I never knew there was money in creating like that. Like, of course I knew if I worked for like a marketing company and made like graphic design type stuff for some kind of, industry or whatever, then yes, I could make money. But this is like a personal brand. And so I wouldn't have ever dreamed that. So I can't even imagine what will happen 10, 15 years down the road, which with technology, the sky's the limit. Now we've got robots and we've got all kinds of stuff out there.
AI, all of those things. I mean, it's crazy just to see how technology can evolve just even in a year, really. I mean, that's another thing that, you and I have to deal with when it comes to doing the jobs that we do outside of being behind the chair. We have to keep up with all those things too. And there's a lot always coming at us and always on our mind, which again can also feed that imposter syndrome. But back to what you said, when I was younger, I was fully convinced at 5 years old that I was going to be president of the United States.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah, I was not going to be a hairdresser, nor was I going to be a content creator. And then I said I wanted to be a lawyer. I had all the things, but this would never have ever come out of my mouth that I would be creating content or educating people. I've always loved to help people and be helpful. But just watching how my career has evolved and gone into these different avenues and all the opportunities I've been given and I've accomplished have just been so amazing. And, when you're younger, your definition of success is, I don't know, a fancy car and a big house and all this money. And then you get older and you're like, the way I feel is success, right?
Yeah.
How happy I am and fulfilled I am personally and professionally. And just, your perspective changes so much as you grow.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that like success as a whole is just such a crazy broad term, because I feel like every single day we're being fed different versions of success through people's social media. And I don't know if it's like the instant gratification side of us that sees that and starts thinking like, oh, I have to do more. But really, like you said, just kind of thinking about how you're feeling and figuring out if, you're happy with where you are. And if you are, then that's success. It doesn't have to be more all the time. And I am so guilty of that. I, you know, all of the health stuff that I've been dealing with. And that is because I was chasing stuff that, like, I loved teaching, but a person can't teach like I did last year for years to come, you know? Like, there was no possible way that I could do that. I went to 15 states in 6 months, and I was on a plane all the time. And, like, just because I did all of that, I didn't feel any more successful at the end than I did before I started. And if anything, I felt less successful because I had no energy to give to anything else. And now I've had to really embrace the slow time, which we actually just talked about this the other day, is taking that time to sit back and reevaluate your business and what's working and what isn't. Because just like say that you were traveling every weekend all over the place for 5 years. Just because you're able to do that doesn't mean I'm able to, and vice versa, you know? Like, we are all so unique, and that's something that I think needs to be talked about more.
Oh, absolutely. And I think how you had said with the comparison and watching other people do it, just because someone else can do it, obviously doesn't mean that you can. It doesn't mean that you can't ever.
Right.
Maybe just not right now, or, you know, just how I made the choice not to educate and travel because I wanted to be with my children more. But knowing that there's different avenues that you can take to still do things that you love and still have, you know, your tank will still be half full instead of running on empty all the time. And, you know, when we overwork ourselves, which I'm super guilty of too, Samantha. I mean, I've had times where I've texted you or texted Lindsay and just been like, I have nothing to give. I have no mental capacity. I don't love to use the word burnout, but I think it's an overused phrase right now. But I do feel that way sometimes. And Lindsay had said to me something that has stuck with me. And this was my very first call with her during our coaching cohort. She said to me, "You are someone who runs, and you run, and you're always achieving, and you're trying. And you're doing great things, but you're so exhausted that you're going to get to a point where your brain will not be able to sustain that. And you will eventually just do nothing. So nothing good will catch you if you keep running. If you slow down, all the good will come, and you'll be in a space mentally to accept these things." And I'm telling you right now, I scrapped a program that I built that I was almost done with, and you know this.
Yep.
It was the hardest, probably one of the hardest things professionally I've ever had to give up. But Rooted Conversations was born from that. So it was because I stood still for a minute.
Yeah, seriously. I as well am a sprinter, a runner. I say a sprinter because I feel like runner maybe doesn't describe what I was doing. I was a really crazy road runner out there, just sprinting through life. And I don't know if I shared this exact situation on a couple of podcast episodes ago, but I know I said my health issues. But what I don't think I mentioned is that at the Behind the Chair show in August, I actually had to leave that show one day early, because I just was like not normal. I don't even know how to explain it. I had a headache. I had no personality whatsoever. I didn't even want to be in the room with a lot of people because I literally was so burnt out. And yes, that term is overused, but I was feeling it. Well, then fast forward 2 weeks later, and that's when I was supposed to go to Nashville for Masters of Balayage. And I was so excited to go. And the day before I got on the plane, I was getting an IV to get energy back. And I actually was told that I didn't need to go. I needed to deal with what was going on. But if I would have paid attention at Behind the Chair and actually rested, like my body was telling me to, I probably could have went to Masters of Balayage. But me being a sprinter, I just kept pushing and pushing. And you're exactly right. Like, your body will give up. And thankfully it gave up then instead of me continuing to go to Nashville. And who knows how much longer I would have had in me to keep pushing. But what if a more serious issue would have come up? Like, that's what ends up happening. That's how autoimmune diseases are, taking over, because people are really freaking stressed out and they aren't dealing with it. But yeah, I totally agree. Taking time to rest. And that was the biggest lesson that Lindsay actually taught me too, is it's okay to not do it all right now. You can't do that very long anyways,
Yeah. And again, having that support system of people that are willing to remind you of that and keep being a cheerleader for you, even when you might be in a season of your life that, doing nothing is the best thing for you. I know me when I'm my busiest and even like busiest behind the chair, doing content creation and all of those things. If I do not prioritize my sleep, my nutrition, and my mental health, I am really not nice to be around. Or I come down with a cold and then I'm down and out for a week. And then my family has to take care of me because when I get sick, I get sick. And I think it's because I ignore symptoms and I just keep pushing through. And just like you, Sam, I mean, we need to start as a whole industry, especially because we have such a physically draining and mentally draining job. We need to be able to see all of those red flags popping up and all those different alerts from our body and our brain telling us to slow down. And sometimes that means not taking that extra client in your day, saying no to opportunities. That is something that, I mean, I've worked on in therapy, being able to set boundaries and say no, because not everything serves you and you don't have to do everything to be successful.
Yeah. And at the end of last year, I actually did this reel of like my whole year as a whole. And I remember so vividly, like still right now, I could get emotional thinking about it. And it's been almost a freaking year later. But I remember watching that year back and thinking to myself, like, I'm going to try not to start crying. But I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I did so much, but I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
Like I really don't. And what's really crazy is, last year is when I won a one-shot award. And the next day I woke up and I was like, now I got to do something else, And it's like, no, I actually hate that I didn't take 24 freaking hours or 2 hours to just sit there and appreciate all the hard work I'd done. I didn't appreciate anything I did last year. And then I thought to myself, I can't keep doing this for, the next 5 years, because then my whole life, my quote unquote prime years have gone by me. For what? Because I'm trying to get this external validation. And so you're so right about our jobs being physically draining and, we're just used to pleasing people, but we really do have to prioritize ourselves at the end of the day, or else all the people we're trying to please in the salon and online and in our homes and all of the stuff, like they're getting the worst sides of us when we really want to give them the best sides. But if you're not resting, you can't pour from an empty cup.
No, you're completely right. And I think too, like from a perspective standpoint, had you not done all of those things and had you not made that real and been able to reflect upon it, you wouldn't be where you are right now. You wouldn't be talking to me in this podcast. You wouldn't be planning something new and amazing for next year. So I think also we need to recognize that even though we push ourselves too much sometimes or sprint, it can lead to good things as well. It can. And you can come out of the other side of that, doing something completely different, changing your journey, but you'll still be okay.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you said that, because I am my worst critic. I know we all are our own worst critics, but I am so hard on myself. And so just hearing you say that, I am someone who's like, oh my gosh, I should have done this, or, I didn't do this good enough or whatever. So thank you for saying that. That's a good perspective shift for me, is to just be grateful that I saw it now instead of continuing down that path. I know you don't want to share all your goals for next year, but what's something that you could share as to what you have coming up? Are you going to teach more classes? I know that you're starting to create more content and kind of get into that area. So what do you have coming up?
Well, a plan of mine is to record and sell classes digitally. My kids are still in a season of their life that they need me, and I would love to travel, and I would love to do a few in-person kind of pop-up classes in different areas in the country, but I also would like to be able to reach as many people as possible. So being able to sell digital education, I think would be really great. Maybe 3 or 4 videos. And then I have some really big plans for Rooted Conversations. So my big focus right away is the different things I want to implement with Rooted Conversations. I would like to actually start bringing guests on as well. So, those are those are some of them. And I think what I tend to do is make goals that I can build upon.
Mm-hmm.
So I typically have 2 main goals a year, and then I break it down into quarters. So what I can do per quarter to build upon the goals that I have set for myself. And I always try to have a theme for the year, which I haven't really nailed down yet, but my theme for 2023 was to simplify.
Okay.
And I think in the back of my head, I knew that I was running so much and I needed to simplify my processes, my thought process, my business, both online and behind the chair. So I'm still kind of working through it. I always use the last 90 days of the year. That is very important for me to get my mind right, especially going into the busy holiday season and ending my year on a good note mentally. So that way I love a new year. It gives me like all the optimism in the world. And I'm one of those people that just loves New Year's and fresh start and all of that. So I like to set myself up for success as much as I can.
Yeah. And I think it's smart that you see, I've been doing this now for, I don't know, 4.5, 5 years, I guess. But I do everything like now. Okay. Like I don't until really recently, like until August, I think. So like a month and a half ago, I don't plan my posts. I wake up every morning and I post something. I wake up every morning and I find the music and write the caption and find the video. Like I don't do any of that in advance, which is actually really freaking nuts if you think about it. And I've been doing this for that long. But just recently, I've started to realize that like, just because I have a goal to create, something like an online class or something like what you were saying, I don't have to have it created within that 24 hours. So I think that what you just said that stuck out to me and everyone listening is probably like, well, duh, that's how you plan. But I'm an immediate person. And so I would create a course within 24 hours and just have it up and ready to go, which is nuts. Like I'm just putting stuff in to a spreadsheet and then I'm launching it. Whereas if I took the time to like put details into it and, make it unique and special and everything I want it to be, it's okay if that's not happening within 24 hours. So I'm getting better now at planning just recently. And actually what it took me starting this podcast and hiring someone to do my editing and just recently hiring a virtual assistant, because with my virtual assistant, I'm just spouting out all this stuff. And she's like, hold on a second. What is the top 3 priorities? And I'm like, well, all of that, and she's like, well, you just gave me like 65 things, they can't all be priority. And I'm like, oh no, I'll have it all done within the next week. And I really would, but then I'm going to end up just even more burnt out than I am now. So for anyone listening, if you're relating to what I just said, try to just take a breath and, like Lisa said, make 2 big goals and build off of those. And it's okay if you don't get them all done by the end of the year, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say, just like you, I recently hired a VA.
Mm-hmm.
I have like major control issues when it comes to my content business, which I know
especially if you're used to doing it. Like if, you've been doing it for years too. So I think that's where the control, it's hard to let go because you're like, well, I've been able to make it work. But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all. Of course. No, that was it. I remember talking to our mutual friend, Allie, about it. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, this is a big step for me. And I even said it to you too. And I will say, again, just like you said, I completely dumped on my VA everything I wanted done. And she said, can you put that in a Google Doc for me?
It's like, oh, is that a lot?
I know. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I guess I could. And then it wasn't until, honestly, I saw it all typed out and it was like 3 pages long. I was like, okay, I get how the speed at which I work can be completely overwhelming to other people. And even though I have slowed down quite a bit from the pace that I used to work at. So I'm like, gosh, 3 pages is slowing down, huh? Maybe I need to cut that a little bit more.
Yeah, no. And my boyfriend, he's a really good example. Like he'll plan, 5 years in advance, where I have so many plans for today that I don't even know I mean, I don't even know if I'll be alive 5 years in advance if I kept running at the rate I was running. I'm kidding, obviously, I hope. But you get what I'm saying. Like, I've never thought past 2 weeks for sure. Like, I'm really immediate. So I think, again, just that support system that you have and seeing the bigger picture, because things come in phases as they're supposed to. And we just have to keep telling ourselves that, or I do. So before we go, though, I want to ask you, I did a poll on my Instagram the other day. And I said, do you order at a drive-thru everything at once, or do you order everything singly? So, like, do you pause between each item? Did you answer that?
I did not answer that.
You didn't? Which one do you do?
I pause.
You pause? Okay, so see, that's the one that won. But what I do is I just start telling the person, because usually when I go to a drive-thru, I know what I'm ordering. And so I'll just say, like, I want chicken with French fries and tea, or, and I just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
But John pauses. And so I'm trying to kind of shift my mindset into being okay with taking those pauses a little more.
Yeah, I never used to, but I do it because, to be honest, I feel like my order's messed up if I don't pause.
You do?
I think like I'm one that can speak very quickly. So I think sometimes when I'm speaking through that drive-through, or even like when I'm on the phone, my husband will even tell me to slow down sometimes when I'm talking. So yeah, I intentionally pause so that way they will add sour cream on my burrito.
I know. I've got to start doing that, because seriously, like the other day, I was having the best day ever. And when I came home, John was like, did you drink a Red Bull? I was like, no, but I had that idea for my education next year. And so I was just like, blah, 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 and just going 1,000 miles per hour. And I'm like, gosh, imagine if I would have drank a Red Bull. I would just be unrecognizable. No one would understand what I was saying. But yeah, taking that time to pause. If y'all get anything out of today's episode, it is that. And just, I knew that immediately whenever Lisa and I decided to do this, that imposter syndrome was the topic that we needed to talk about, and just figuring out, what success means to you as a person in any industry, not just the hair world. But thank you for being open and honest and just willing to talk about this with me, and just always being a support system for me. You are seriously one. We met virtually, but now we've become super, super close through social media and, the digital space.
Heck yeah. I mean, that's just your reminder for any of you that feel lost or feel like you don't know what your next step is. Reach out and tell somebody you really like what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always have to come with an ask, just complimenting someone on how they educate, or the hair that they do, or the nails that they do. It doesn't matter what end of this industry you're in. Make a friend who knows what you are going through. And I promise you, it will change your life. Like, I never in a million years thought that I would be making some of my closest friends on Instagram. And I have the absolute honor of sitting here today and talking to one of my closest friends in this podcast. So I just feel so damn lucky.
Thank you. I feel lucky too. So everyone listen to what she said and reach out to someone, even if it's someone you admire and you're like scared to reach out to. You never know what could happen. So put yourself out there, and you will be so glad that you did.
That's right.
Today, I am here with my friend, Lisa Tucker, and y'all may know her on Instagram as, crap, now I just went blank. Wait, let me restart. Today, I am here with my friend, Lisa Tucker, who you may know on Instagram as Rooted with Lisa, or Rooted by. I keep messing that up. Okay, so I said it right. I'm like overthinking it. Okay, let me restart. Okay, y'all, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to follow the show on whatever platform you're listening, and leave a rating and review to show your support so we can continue growing together. If today's episode really resonated with you, you can always share it to your story, and be sure to tag me so I can personally thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you again next week.